Mingalaba, Mabuhay! Welcome to the Webishop series on nurturing ourselves as whole person educators. There are 6 Webishops in this series organized by the United Board for Myanmar alumni of United Board programs. The Webishops are virtual workshops which express our solidarity with Myanmar colleagues and are aimed at supporting and sustaining their continuing whole person education during this challenging time of their country's history. Each video recording has been edited for brevity and is made available for other educators who may find some valuable strategies to cope with similar challenges. Once again, welcome.
The title of my presentation today is Expressive Writing. I divided it into 2 parts, writing for self-awareness and writing for healing. As I was taught, the title should already give an idea of how you organize your presentation. But I'd like to inform everyone here present that I actually reversed organization of my presentation today. I will be talking about expressive writing as therapy first before I go to writing for self-awareness. I have 2 reasons for this. One is that I will just be sharing with you the paradigm for expressive writing as therapy as was given by Dr. Jamie Pennebaker. And since I am not a psychologist, so I would not be able to discuss the therapeutic aspect of, I will say, EW, that's expressive writing, in the clinical sense that the experts in the field would. And so I will just be sharing the paradigm. Well, of course, I will comment in terms of my reading. I'm not going to really delve more deeply since I am not an expert in the field. The second part is expressive writing for self-awareness, which is more up to my alley as a literature person. This particular part of my presentation is ideally to be presented toward the end for better time management. For the benefit of those who are not familiar with the expressive writing, I'd like to share 2 definitions of the term. The first one comes from the acknowledged pioneer in expressive writing as therapy. That's Dr. Jamie Pennebaker. He says that expressive writing, which is also otherwise known as emotional writing, is a self-reflective tool that allows us to explore emotional upheavals in our lives, forcing us to look inward and examine who we are. Here's another definition of EWs. This comes from the Encyclopedia of Behavioral Medicine, but it is a definition that builds on from Dr. Pennebaker's definition. It states that EW is a form of therapy in which individuals write about their thoughts and feelings related to a personal, stressful, or traumatic life experience, sometimes referred to as written disclosure, because writers are instructed to disclose personal information, thoughts, and feelings. EW is personal, free-flowing, and informal, often without concern for style, spelling, punctuation, or grammar. So aside from emotional writing, expressive writing can also be called written disclosure, since that is actually the nature of expressive writing. So based on the 2 definitions that are given, expressive writing is simple and personal. And what I think is more important to many of us is that it is freely available to anyone, to everyone. You don't have to go to a clinic, you don't have to go to a psychiatrist to be able to start therapy, but you can do it on your own time and in your own place and way. So it's simple and personal and free. However, it could be a powerful self-care tool. As many studies have already established, it promotes healing, stress reduction, personal growth, and inner peace. To connect this lecture to what Miss Sylvia Din presented last time, she pointed out that writing is one of the toolkits that could be done to promote healing. And so, specifically, expressive writing is that kind of writing, according to psychologists. According to one blogger, marrying both literature and psychology, writing is a way to let go of storylines and memories that keep us stuck so that we can write empowered self narratives. In other words, because what we are going to be doing today is to be talking about life stories and other kinds of stories. We all have storylines. However, we would like that storyline to be empowered self narratives. And that's why we are going to be talking about expressive writing today. I just want to trace the evolution of what we know now as expressive writing, or EW, in the early or late 70s. Dr. Pennebaker and his students conducted a survey on health issues in their own campus. That is the University of Texas at Austin. And apparently, while the group was trying to finalize the questionnaire, someone suggested to include a question on traumatic sexual experiences in childhood. And that was how that particular question was included in that questionnaire on health issues. So when the results came out of 800 college women, 10% answered that they have had traumatic sexual experience during childhood. And for those who reported such sexual trauma, they were found out to have suffered more health problems than any other group that Dr. Pennebaker and his students included in their study. Study that followed up the study done by Pennebaker and company was that conducted by the magazine Psychology Today. If Pennebaker's study was limited to university students, this time around, the magazine study was cross-sectional, which meant that they had respondents from all walks of life, and the respondents were within a wide age range. What is interesting here is that the Psychology Today health survey included a similar traumatic sexual experience question. It was like they modeled that question from the Pennebaker study earlier on. And the magazine found out of the 24,000 respondents, 22% of the women and 10% of the men divulged that they have had previous traumatic sexual experience. Like the earlier study, these respondents also have had health problems such as ulcers, the flu, and cancer, and that those who experienced the trauma at an early age had been hospitalized nearly twice as often as those who did not report such traumas. So from university setting to cross-sectional within the US, we have here this time around studies on various traumatic experiences, not just mainly about sexual traumatic experiences. It was also done from different parts of the world, and so that's why it's global. And these later large-scale surveys affirm that any kind of traumatic experience is bad for one's health, and if kept secret, increases the odds that one will have health problems. So these particular studies were actually the beginnings of what we now know of as EW as therapy. Okay, so we are going to have the second part of my presentation today, which I entitled as Expressive Writing for Self-Healing, to encapsulate the essence of this particular section. I have here on the screen an excerpt from the poem The Madness Base by Andrea Gibson. May I ask someone to read the stanza, please?
The trauma said, "Don't write these poems. Nobody wants to hear you cry about the grief inside your bones."
We're not going to analyze the poem yet, since there's going to be another portion of the poem that I quote for the third section. But anyway, I just want you to understand the idea that trauma really thrives in dark places, in hidden places. And so if it is not let out, as you can see in the poem, the trauma is personified, talking to the persona, to the owner of the body, and saying, "You do not share me because anyway, nobody wants to listen to you." However, this is where we need expressive writing. Especially, I would like to emphasize the self-healing, because I understand that many people from Asia are hesitant to share what they think, what they feel, not necessarily their traumatic experiences, because traumatic experiences are more sensitive and it's more difficult to open up to just anybody. This is what makes expressive writing different, in the sense that it promotes self-healing. The original study that gave birth to what is now known as EW, as we know today, is again a study done by Dr. Pennebaker and his graduate student colleague, Sandra Beal. College students were divided into two groups. Some were told to write their traumatic experiences, and the other group were told to write anything that they can think of, like superficial topics. So they will write for 4 consecutive days and 15 minutes a day. With the students' permission, the Student Health Center would release the number of illness visits each student made in the months before and versus after the experiment. And you see on the screen the results of that study done by Dr. Pennebaker and, well, now Dr. Sandra Beal. So the results compared to people in the control group. So control group means those who wrote about superficial topics. Those who wrote about traumatic experience evidence the following, like immediate increase in feelings of sadness and anxiety after writing. Those who go into expressive writing need to be warned that there is no immediate positive result. Dr. Pennebaker, in his books that I will be sharing with you, kept reminding everybody that right after the writing process, you will feel sadness, like a feeling that you have after watching a sad movie. Maybe there will be some tears involved. However, this should not be a cause for worry, because the second result assessed that many of the respondents who revealed that they have had traumatic experiences had long-term drops in visits to the health center for illness. In other words, they showed marked recovery in terms of physical health. So they no longer visited the health center as often as they did before they did the expressive writing. And afterwards, a greater sense of value and meaning as a result of having participated in that writing. As you can see in the explanation, because I copied this en toto from Dr. Pennebaker's book, many of the students expressed gratitude toward him when they found him or when they met him on campus for letting them be part of the experiment. I will just be presenting the so-called Pennebaker paradigm for expressive writing. And because we cannot modify this in as much as it is used for therapy, and so there are specific instructions that need to be followed. And I put them here since you might want to echo this particular presentation to your own community, to the people around you. And so I copied from Dr. Pennebaker's book, but I edited a little bit for purposes of brevity and clarity. If you are conducting expressive writing to a group, and of course, if you are going to do it yourself, ideally you should try it on yourself. It says here that time is important, and so you should write a minimum of 20 minutes. It has been modified, so you can actually choose between 15 to 20 minutes, but you should not go beyond 20 minutes per day for 4 consecutive days. Dr. Pennebaker emphasizes that someone who will do expressive writing for self-healing should do it on consecutive days. You cannot say, all right, today I will do it. Tomorrow, I'm sorry, I will be very busy. I'll just continue on Monday. But he suggests that the writing should be done on consecutive days. Okay. So for the topic, choose something that's personal and important to you. And I think that that personal and important, more specifically, something that has been bothering you, that has caused emotional upheaval, so to speak, or that has traumatized you. And then the third guideline is write continuously. Don't worry about punctuation, spelling, or grammar. And if you run out of things to say, draw a line or repeat what you have already written. Keep pen on paper. Now, this is the principle of what we call in literature or creative writing as free writing, as you will encounter the word a little bit later. So free writing means that once the pen is on the paper, you are supposed to not lift it. Don't lift the pen from the paper. Write, write, write. If you can't think of the word, you write it maybe in another language that you happen to know. So if you are writing in Burmese, like in your language, in your original language, what I feel that is one of my modifications. I will suggest that you write in the language you happen to be most comfortable in. And if that is your mother tongue, then go ahead and do it. So while you're writing in your mother tongue and you cannot think of the word you want to use, you can use English, the English word. Or if not, you can just, as it says here, draw a line, which means that you cannot think of what you want to say. So you draw a line so that the flow of your ideas will still continue, and that pen does not leave the paper. Why don't you worry? This is connected to write only for yourself. Plan to destroy or hide what you are writing if you wish. Do not insert it somewhere else. If you really are sure that you don't want anybody to see it, that's only for your eyes, then you can destroy it immediately. But if you want to revise it later, maybe you can keep it in a safe place. The flip out rule says that if you get into the writing and you feel that you cannot write about a certain event yet, then don't push yourself. You have to stop writing. And Dr. Pennebaker does not actually advise for someone to write about an incident that is happening at the moment that is causing too much emotional upheaval, because maybe personally you will not be able to handle it. So normally, what is written in expressive writing are those that have happened sometime back, like the lockdown. You can talk about it now, the pandemic, because it happened last year. So maybe you already have some perspective about it now. But perhaps what is happening in Myanmar right now, if you feel uneasy, or you feel you cannot yet put words into paper, the thoughts that's running in your minds, then don't force yourself. All right. And I think this is already a repeat of what was pointed out earlier, that once you finish the writing session, then you expect to feel a little bit of sadness, not relief, not, oh, finally I'm done. But it's a bit of sadness, I guess, because you had to relive, recall something that was quite negative that happened to you in the past. This writing process just gives you an overview, and you can read this later. As I said, I don't plan to discuss all the slides, but I really purposely gave more details for purposes of echoing, or if you wish. I also included the specific instructions that Dr. Pennebaker and his colleagues like Dr. Evans, Dr. Smith, as what to do in writing, uh, like what to tackle during day one writing, day two writing, day three, and day four writing. And because don't expect us to be doing this here anyway, so you can just go over them later on, that if there are some questions, I will be free to help clarify matters. This is abstract if you are going to be discussing it. If this were in a workshop, it's imperative that we talk about the specifics of day one free writing for entire 20 minutes. Since I don't expect to tackle this, but I just wanted to show you a sample, or like, how the paradigm looks like. After the day one instruction writing, an important point of expressive writing is for the writer to do self-evaluation. This is post-writing thoughts, like you're going to scale yourself based on how sad you feel, how upset you feel while you are writing. Reminder is, for day one, if you don't want anybody to see your writing, you can immediately destroy it afterwards. Now, day two is much like day one. Again, free writing, and afterwards, after the writing session, which means after 20 minutes at the most, then you are supposed to again complete the post-writing questionnaire. There are also some questions that are asked you, and that you can incorporate eventually in your day three of writing. Day three of writing, this time around, you are going to focus not on the event itself, but on your feelings. That's what Pennebaker is saying. But the process is the same. After you have written your piece, then you have to accomplish the questionnaire. So again, there are some questions that's meant to aid you in your reflection after you have done the exercise. And the last day of free writing is like normal writing. You need to wrap up what you have written. But again, you need to also complete the post-writing questionnaire. Maybe your therapist will be able, or you yourself as your therapist, will be able to compare the journey that you have done in the short 4 days. If you said you were very sad the first day, maybe the fourth day you are only sad. An important reminder of you after you have done the 4-day writing, according to Dr. Pennebaker, you should leave your what you have written for a day or two. Do not go over and reread at once, because that means that you need to reflect on what you have done first. As it says here, it's strongly recommended that you take at least 2 to 3 days off from the writing before you revisit your writing. And I think that this goes with any kind of writing. Like if you've done a research, if you finished it, you should not edit it immediately. You have to leave it for a while. And that is also the same principle followed by expressive writing. This is the last part of the excerpt that I have presented earlier. In the excerpt or in the stanza that was presented earlier, the trauma was telling the persona not to reveal the experience because anyway, nobody will listen or nobody cares. Nobody cares to attend to your own grief. But the ending here, well, it's kind of open, but I'd like to believe that it is hopeful in the sense that it's especially the last line or that the persona is aware. It says, but my bones said Tyler Clemente jumped from the George Washington Bridge into the Hudson River, convinced he was entirely alone. And the last line, which is very significant, my bones said, write the poems. And this will also encapsulate this portion of my presentation. Self-awareness, just so we will have an operationalized definition for this webshop, is conscious knowledge of our own character, feelings, motives, and desires, or the ability to tune into your feelings, thoughts, and actions. And that being self-aware also means being able to recognize how other people see you. What makes self-awareness important is that it aids healing one's emotional problems. And so we tie in self-awareness to self-healing. Some examples of free writing or expressive writing that you can do to promote self-awareness are journaling, which I think everyone is already familiar with, but this time around journaling is 5 to 6 minutes a day. So it's not the 4-day period of expressive writing, but you can do it like a diary. You can do it every day for as long as you want to. The difference, of course, between expressive writing as therapy and expressive writing in the literary sense or in the journaling sense is that you write in your diary, you write in your journal what happened that day. In expressive writing for healing or for therapy, as Penny Baker and company conceived, is that you write because you want to bring out certain negative emotions, and by bringing out those emotions or the trauma hidden in yourself, then it's expected that you will heal. Like heal not only emotionally, but also physically and spiritually. And so eventually you will have inner peace. Okay. And then letter writing as well. I think for those of you who have done letter writing to yourself, it is a very good means of releasing what's inside yourself, because it's like, as what this one says, it's a conversation with yourself. The third I really like. I adapted this from blogger writer Ann Taylor. Because of all the negative things that's going on around us, it's really a bit difficult to think of something that we are thankful about. And so she suggested lockdown gratitude list. So my first exercise today is I want you to list at least one that you feel appreciative about despite the lockdown, despite the pandemic, and for those in Myanmar, despite also the militarization in your country. What can be a part of your gratitude list if you are asked to compile a lockdown gratitude list?
There is a question.
Actually, I very thankful to you, Dr. Andrea, for this very interesting presentation. And I just like to know about writing time for expressive writings. So
Yeah, yeah.
you presented that for that activity we need to do 4 consecutive days
Mm-hmm.
for
Yes.
15 to 20 minutes. So
Yes.
I just like to know that the time we write.
Yeah, ideally you follow the same time. Yes. Although, of course, it was pointed out that in the study done by Penny Baker and Company that came out in 1986, it was actually the time and the place was arbitrary because they needed a place in the university, in the campus. But as someone who has done a little bit of writing, I feel that your creative juices flow at a specific time. You have your downtime and high time. So if you find that you write well in the afternoon, if you happen to be someone who cannot wake up in the morning, then do so. But yes, ideally, expressive writing should be done at the same time. But if you can't, then at least during consecutive days. People who do not want to write their feelings, then that means you are not yet ready. Expressive writing means it is your way of expressing your own feelings. So if you feel you cannot yet express it, but as I said, that's the beauty of expressive writing. Since you are not obligated to show it to anybody. So you can write it down, and that is already therapeutic enough. Writing it down on paper, but afterwards you're going to tear the paper, since you don't want anybody to read it. Nobody else to read it but yourself. Tear the paper down, because according to the experts, the act of writing down or putting into words what you are feeling is already therapeutic in itself. Okay. So, did anybody come up with a lockdown gratitude list? Can I have one sample, please? So, lockdown gratitude list: laptop, mobile phone. Yes. Oh my goodness. Right. I think everybody, that's a very important possession during these times. Okay, that's good. Cooking, spending more time with mom. All right, yes. Bonding time with family. The similes you're familiar with. I want us to go to the last one. I purposely added more exercises, as I said, for purposes of you doing this with your students. And that's why I gave detailed instructions. I actually asked my creative writing faculty members, those who have written a lot, to help me with a simplified instruction so that you can use them. One sentence story will promote focus on ourselves. You know, if you are given a limited time and a limited number of words, then you are more aware of what you want to do and, of course, the feeling that you want to express. So it's self explanatory, one sentence story. I really would like to show this to you because these are examples of writings from our students. They came up with one sentence stories. The first one: laughter is the best medicine, except when you're alone at 1 a.m. and you know it's not coming from you. So I was commenting when I saw this that it expresses very Filipino humor. Can you get the point of the first one of the one sentence story? What's happening here? It's a
Sorry, I'm
ghost
sorry.
story, right? The second one is, "Hey, sexy, give me a kiss," said the tricycle driver to me in front of the church. So there's like a cultural aspect here to appreciate this particular one storyline. To Filipinos, the church is a sacred place, you know. And so it's ironic that the persona was disrespected in front of the church. And of course, like, "Hey, sexy, give me a kiss," and that's really being very rude. Some stories are culturally bound, but I think the last one is very common and it's very literal, right? Everybody understands that. I don't really want to be an engineer, but I really don't want to be a failure to my parents. I want you to perhaps use these exercises on yourself before you can do it to others. Very closely similar to the one sentence story is what is known as 6-word memoirs, right? So a very famous one is the first example. Perhaps some of you have even come across this. It is attributed to Ernest Hemingway, but my research says actually not. It says here, for sale, baby shoes never worn. What is the story that is given here?
It is a tragic one.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's
Parents lost their babies.
That's right. Because it's never worn, so they're selling them. So the other example, Larry Smith, the one, that's why I gave an example for Larry Smith, because he was the one who actually advocated or started the so-called 6-word memoirs. So you write your life story, not of course your entire biography, your your life at the moment in 6 words, and that will promote awareness. And Larry says, and my last word is, I would have you never ask. What do you think is in there? So this is a fun thing to do. So you can also do 6-word memoirs, and maybe you can even compile them and publish them. Another one is literary translation. So maybe your take on what is happening in your country right now. We just gave some props that you might want to use. And so you can use this as your assignments. That's the end of my presentation.